Frank Rice has this 1957 Ford Supercharged for 12.
Before I start the video, don't forget to vote in the upper right corner for which car you think is going to win this race. Also, come on, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and check us out on Instagram. Let's do this. This is a 1977 Pontiac Firebird Trans Am, and I think it's pretty obvious where I'm headed with all the jokes today. This was arguably one of the best cars made in the late 1970s, and it was made famous by the 1977 smash hit movie Smokey and the Bandit, featuring Burt Reynolds, Sally Field, Jerry Reed, and Jackie Gleason.
Where are you, you son of a bitch?
And I have to say, the movie did an absolutely fantastic job making this car look fast and sound absolutely nasty. But in reality, they really weren't that quick. Very cool looking car, just not the most powerful.
As soon as I get home, the first thing I'm gonna do is punch your mama in the mouth.
Speaking of punch to the mouth, let's see what engine options were available in the Trans Am that year. The base engine was 400 cubic inches and termed the 6.6 liter, and it put out 180 horsepower. Or for only another $50, you could upgrade to the TA 6.6, which was also 400 cubic inches, but it put out 200 horsepower. There was even an Oldsmobile 403 available that made 185 horsepower, but that was mainly only used in California and high altitude areas. And which engine do you think our featured car is packing? Well, it's the base 6.6 liter, 180 horsepower at 3,600 RPM, and 325 pound-feet of torque at only 1,600 RPM. And even though it might not be the top-of-the-line engine available in the Trans Am that year, it still holds very true to the movie Smokey and the Bandit. That's actually the car they used, the base 6.6 liter. Hey, what do you guys think the compression ratio is on that 6.6 liter? 7.6 to 1. If you had the base engine in the Trans Am, you only had one transmission option available, and that was an automatic. If you were looking for a 4-speed, well, you were going to first have to upgrade to the 200 horsepower version, and then it was available. But the automatic wasn't terrible. It was the TH350, and it was calibrated to run that thing all the way to the red line, so it did all right.
Does this thing move?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, you just saw that car chirp second gear. Can you hear me now?
I hear perfectly. The fact that you are a sheriff is not germane to the situation.
The goddamn Germans got nothing to do with it.
A highway-friendly 323 rear gear was standard on these cars, but our featured one has been upgraded to a 342 set. That should help it move just a little quicker. I mean, not much, but a little bit. The Firebird was getting pretty chunky by 1977, and our featured car with driver is coming in at 3,982 pounds. But you know what? I'm okay with that because you guys know me. I like 'em thick. Makes my pants tingle.
And don't play with yourself. It wouldn't look nice on my highway. Oh, you can think about it, but don't do it.
Not only were these cars kinda thick, but they were actually pretty expensive. If you got the special edition Trans Am with the Hearst hatch T-tops, that was coming in at $6,570 without any other options, which adjusting for inflation is about $28,000 today. But when Car and Driver reviewed one of these Trans Ams in 1977, they had a car that was fully loaded, and it came in at $8,161, and if you adjust for inflation, that's $34,845 today. As you could imagine, with the success of Smokey and the Bandit, the Trans Am sold incredibly well. The special edition cars alone accounted for 15,567 sales. But if you break that down into the T-top cars with the base engine, well, that's 6,030, so it's kinda rare, I guess. But nothing to get too excited over.
I want to jump a house! I want to jump something!
I'll jump me.
As I already mentioned, Car and Driver tested one of these cars in 1977, and it went 0 to 60 in 9.3 seconds. And I won't lie, you guys, the quarter-mile time is about equally impressive. You might want to grab a stiff drink for this one, because it ran the quarter in 16.9 seconds at 82 miles per hour. Here's a fun fact for you guys about the movie Smokey and the Bandit. Apparently they only used 3 Trans Ams for all of the filming, which is unbelievable considering the amount of abuse that they put those cars through.
Jesus!
Yeah, they just forded a river with that Trans Am. You think you could do that with a Hemi Roadrunner or a Boss Mustang? But seriously, you guys, I commend Pontiac on this car because it's super cool. They made it as high performance as they could at that time, and it's kind of a big FU to all the regulations.
You be careful, you hear?
But enough talk about this 1977 Firebird Trans Am Special Edition. Let's check out its opponent. This is a 1957 Ford Custom 300. And sure, it kind of looks like a Ford Fairlane, but it's not. It's a Custom 300. Technically, this would have been more of a mid-size from Ford. It was 2 inches shorter in wheelbase than the Ford Fairlane. And I always found the advertising for these Custom 300s to be really interesting because Ford claimed that it was the biggest car offered at the price. I suppose that is one way to get buyers, and I probably would have gone for it because I like them big.
Plastic knife.
Ooh, how do I sign up to be the next watermelon?
Knockers bouncing all over the joint. It'll go that way.
Let's talk about some Ford V8s that you could get in 1957. The 312 cubic inch Thunderbird Special was the top dog offered from Ford, and there were a few versions available. There was one that was 245 horsepower and another that was 270 horsepower. But if you wanted a little bit more, you could have the dealership install a Paxton Supercharger. Ford rated this thing at 300 horsepower, Paxton said it was 360 horsepower, but the truth probably lies somewhere in between, most likely around 330 or 340 gross horsepower. Hey, you guys, you looking for some torque? Because I got some great looking torque over here. 340 pound-feet at 4,300 RPM, and that's all with a compression ratio of 8.5 to 1. And you guys might be wondering, well, how much boost does that little supercharger put out? And when it's wound up, about 6 PSI, so not too shabby. This thing was built at a time when cars were cars, men were men, and women were also kind of like men. And this thing is coming in with driver at 3,810 pounds. So even though the Ford is kind of heavy, it still has a 172 pound advantage over the Trans Am. Transmission options were a little bit limited for the Fords in 1957. You could get a 3-speed manual, but it was a column shift, or you could get a 3-speed automatic, and that's what this car features. It was called the Ford-O-Matic, and 1957 was actually the last year for that specific transmission. It generally started out in 2nd gear, and then it would shift to 3rd automatically, but if you drop it into low gear, it will use 1st. I'm just going to assume that's what the driver will do. The transmission is definitely a limiting factor for this car, but I cannot say the same for the rear end, because this thing's got a set of 411 gears, and hopefully that'll make up a little bit for that slow transmission. But enough talk about these two cars, let's see what they can do on the drag strip.
Actually, Heather, here we go. 77 Trans Am going I'll tell you more about this car when the next time it runs. Right now, let's talk about ETs.
And the Trans Am ran a 15.64 at 87.73 miles per hour, compared to the Ford's 15.76 at 74.73 miles per hour. And this is actually a rare scenario with the Ford actually winning this round even though its ET was a little bit slower, so let me explain it. With these races, they use time trial times, so the clock does not start until the cars actually move. So therefore, if you have a much better reaction time than your opponent, you can still win even though your ET is a little bit worse. And that's exactly what happened here. Let's see what happens in round 2.
Ford, 1576 up next. Paul and Heather Pagchuk have this 1977 Pontiac Trans Am Bandit Edition. And Frank Rice has this 1957 Ford Supercharged 312. score this one, folks. It looks like the winner of this one will be Frank.
And the Ford takes this one as well, running a 15.54 at 95.01 miles per hour compared to the Trans Am's 15.68 at 87.20 miles per hour.
And 57 Ford.
Thanks for watching, you guys. I really appreciate it. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel, and I'll see you at the next one.